Hey guys, it's Joni here with Barn Chic. Before I get started with this video, be sure to subscribe to our new YouTube channel. This is our first official how-to video. And then find us on social media on Facebook. We also have a store page called Lemons and Lace Marketplace where we sell all of our clothing and everything. Besides that, so this is the dresser that I refinished behind me for my son's nursery. Obviously, I've got something going on here. I was around 30 weeks pregnant whenever I refinished this, so I just did a voiceover for each step on what I did, and I'll explain the details of everything that I used. And everything I used you can find online on our store, or of course at your local Sloan stockist. So be sure to subscribe, give us the video a thumbs up, let us know what you think, and be looking for more fun videos like this in the future. So here's just a list of items that I used throughout this project. You can pause it and go back to it later, but I'll speak more about them in detail throughout the video. So here I'm just showing you the paint bucket and then the Sloan Chateau Gray. I'm just going to mix these colors together. I'm not measuring. You can measure. If you're doing big projects like your kitchen cabinets, I highly recommend knowing what your ratio is. So just be sure, you mix, you get your right color. I always over compensate for my paint, so I have a lot left over, which I use on other projects later on. So I'm just showing you the sample boards I did here. I like to always test out what colors combinations are going to be to see if I actually like them, and that's what I'm doing here. I have Chateau Gray, French linen, and pure white. I have some that's mixed with just pure white and Chateau Gray, and then some that has a little bit more French linen than the other colors. So just playing with the ratios, showing you what I did. So here's just what I have in my bucket. I have quite a bit. I probably overkilled on it, but I'd rather have more left over for other projects than to run out and try to remix that color because I didn't do my ratios. So here I am showing you my handy dandy, one of my favorite little tools I made out in my workshop. It's just a 1x2 board with seriously brad nails punched through it. And I use it for wormholes, and I'll show you kind of the distressing and everything that I added to the dresser already. I wanted something for that black wax to grit into, to kind of show those details, to give it that character, because it is a mid-century modern, but I didn't want to have just a plain flat color. I wanted some dimension to it. I also took a hammer to it in some areas. So there's dings and dents, and I will show later on all the details. I used Sloan's bristle paintbrush. It's a size small. It's one of my favorite go-to paintbrushes. I've had some that have lasted over 7+ years if you really take care of them. They will last a really long time. Plus, they hold a ton of paint, so when you're painting, you're not having to constantly go dip your brush back and forth, reapplying and everything. So what I'm doing here is I am just painting every which way. You can paint with the grain if you want to. It's habit for me because I'm an artist. I've done it for years. But honestly, on pieces, you can paint every which way, and it does not matter. So I'm just going to fast forward through some of these longer bits so the video is not so long, but just make sure you go back on top of any runs. I do usually on the edges where the corners are and stuff, But if you want that extra texture of runs and just thickness, you can definitely do that with Annie's paint. It's actually really fun, all the different techniques you can do. This is a more basic, simple technique that I'm doing today, just because it is a mid-century modern type piece. On other pieces, I have done real heavy textures, added different layers of paint, and really built it up to make it look like that old antique piece, and they're beautiful. So I have several of those in our store, but for this style, I'm doing more of a modern, clean look in his room. So with this, I forgot to mention to you guys, I just literally stuck a sheet down in his nursery and started painting. You don't need a whole bunch of space. It dries quickly, so don't feel like you have to have a secluded area or you have to be out in the garage in the heat or the cold painting. There's very, very, very low fumes, if any fumes, so it's super safe to use indoors. So here I just kind of want to show you the coat coverage. I usually always tell my customers it's 1.5 to 2 coats, but you can see how well it goes on and how thick it goes on. So you're not spending a whole bunch of time throughout your day painting and layering on coats of paint and wasting a lot of paint. You can use that paint later on, new projects. And here's just a walkthrough of that first coat. Some of it's still wet, you can see, but on the front of the dresser, it's already dried. So I just start painting my second coat right after this. Also, whenever you use her paint, don't try to be perfect or expect yourself to be perfect painting. You can see I have splotches here. Not worried about it. Just slap it on there. Let the paint start to dry and don't overwork it. People start to get frustrated whenever they're trying to cover up those splotches and they're just working back on top of wet paint, which can become quite frustrating and gunky looking. So you just want to kind of get it on there, get it painted, and your second coat will for sure cover everything, which I'll show you guys here. So a fun fact here while we're walking through this, Annie's paint, her chalk paint name, actually derives from the matte-like finish when it dries. So you can kind of see some of the glossy areas when it's wet, and then when it dries, it's matte. And what that is the paint is porous. So whatever you put on top of it, it's going to absorb. So that's why her wax works so well with her paint, because it absorbs right into the paint and they keep hardening over time. With wax, people often get scared because it's different than just your glossier finishes, but I actually love it more because you can spot treat with it. So later on, as my son gets older and wiser with crayons and everything like I did whenever I was a teenager, he's probably going to take a Sharpie to this dresser or a few crayons, and I'll be able to simply take some wax out of a can, fresh wax out of one of her cans, and go over it, and it'll come right back off. So with her paint being a porous paint, it breathes moisture through it. So that's beneficial for when you need to paint something that's outdoors, like your pots, or people have painted their concrete, their storefronts, stuff like that. It will wick moisture through, so you won't get the chipping and flaking that you would with a paint that doesn't, like latex paints or even some of your outdoor paints that can't absorb the moisture and push it back out. So this maybe took me 30 to 40 minutes to paint the whole thing, 2 coats. That includes the paint drying and everything. So it's really quick and easy project. You can do, small projects, even medium-sized projects in the morning. Let it dry, and in the afternoon, if you feel like waxing, wax it. But I love it just because it's so simple and easy to use and quick. Oh, caught me dancing. So on here, I'm just showing you how much paint I used. I didn't use very much at all, so I have a ton left over, which is okay because I love the color and I'll use it for other projects in our store. But I'm going to show you guys how I store that extra paint here in a second. My husband is like a big spaghetti fan, but I always save my jars because I feel like if I don't, I'm so wasteful. So I'll put leftover paint inside jars that are mixed. Of course, I just use my cans whenever I'm painting, just dip directly out of my cans. But whenever I do a mixture, I always pour it into a jar. I label it. If I kind of know what the ratio is, I'll add maybe a 3-to-1 ratio type deal on it. And I'll also put what project I had used it for before, so I know when I go back and I go through my stock, I'm like, hey, oh, I remember what this looked like. I'm going to use it on this new project. So here I am just using clear wax. I'm going right over the dried paint. You want to make sure your paint's dry. You don't want to wax on top of wet paint, of course. But I've always told my customers that it's a two-handed deal. You wax on and then you feel with your other hand of where the wax is. And you can actually see it go on some colors. Some it's kind of harder to see, but after that, you're just going to go, if you want your colored wax, which I'm using my black wax, you're going to go directly right after with your black wax or your dark wax, whichever one you decide to use. And I'm going to hit the grooves, like where I have those wormholes and all the distressing, because I want those to really stand out. And if you have trouble like with some of your dark color waxes, manipulate them, just use some clear wax and go back over the top of it, and it works as an eraser. So because that paint is porous, you want to make sure you always use clear wax first, because whatever you put on top of it, it's going to absorb into it. So that clear wax makes the colored wax more pliable when you start to manipulate it and want to work it back off. And yes, I have a face mask on because there is some smell to the wax. So I highly recommend, if you are pregnant, to speak with your doctor. I am not a doctor by any means, so I am not saying that you can paint while pregnant or wax while pregnant. So I'm just showing you the details of where the wax went on, and it went into those distressing, those wormholes that I was talking about in the beginning of the video. I love it. It turned out perfect. I actually added some black handles to this, which I'll show you on the finished picture, and it just accented everything perfectly. For more information on how to use Annie's products, visit your local stockist, and you can find them at anniesloan.com. Thank you guys for watching this video. Be sure to leave some comments below on how we can improve, or maybe what you would like to see us refinish in the future, or how-to video. Be sure to stay tuned, because I'll be doing a walkthrough of how I transformed his nursery. Everything I used in his nursery is Annie Sloan. As far as I refinished the bookshelf, his shelving units, even these ones up here behind me, shelf over here. So be sure to stay tuned. I'll link that video whenever I get it done below here.